Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Twits. Today we are going to be reading chapters 14, 15, and 16. Chapter 14. The house, the tree, and the monkey cage. But that's enough of that. We can't go on forever watching these two disgusting people doing disgusting things to each other. We must get ahead with the story. Here is a picture of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's house and garden. Some house. It looks like a prison, and not a window anywhere. Who wants windows? Mr. Twit had said when they were building it. Who wants every Tom, Dick, and Harry peeping in to see what you're doing? It didn't occur to Mr. Twit that windows were meant mainly for looking out of, not for looking into. And what do you think of that ghastly garden? Mrs. Twit was the gardener. She was very good at growing thistles and stinging nettles. I always grow plenty of spiky thistles and plenty of stinging nettles, she used to say. They keep out nasty, nosy little children. Near the house, you can see Mr. Twit's work shed. To one side, there is the big dead tree. It never has any leaves on it because it's dead. And not far from the tree, you can see the monkey cage. There are 4 monkeys in it. They belong to Mr. Twit. You'll find out about them later. What words or phrases does Roald Dahl use to create a negative feeling about the Twits' house? So in the part that we just read, Roald Dahl says some things that help us create a picture in our mind of Mr. and Mrs. Twit's house and garden, and the picture that he creates in our mind is one that isn't very nice. So what exactly does Roald Dahl say that helps us have a bad picture in our head? You might want to rewind the video a little bit so you can pause it and reread what I've just read, okay? But some pointers. What does the house look like? It kind of looks like a different type of building. And is that type of building a good place or a bad place? And also, give you some more clues. There's no windows anywhere. Would you like to be in a house that has no windows? I wouldn't. He also says, he describes the garden and the type of plants that grow in the garden. He also talks about something else that's in the garden. Lots of clues there. So you're going to choose something and then you're going to write it down. Chapter 15. Hug tight sticky glue. Once a week, on Wednesdays, the Twits had bird pie for supper. Mr. Twit caught the birds and Mrs. Twit cooked them. Mr. Twit was good at catching birds. On the day before Bird Pie Day, he would put the ladder up against the big dead tree and climb into the branches with a bucket of glue and a paintbrush. The glue he used was something called Hug Tight, and it was stickier than any other glue in the world. He would paint it along the tops of all the branches and then go away. As the sun went down, birds would fly in from all around to roost for the night in the big dead tree. They didn't know, poor things, that the branches were all smeared with horrible Hug Tight. How often do Mr. and Mrs. Twit eat bird pie? It's in the first paragraph. Okay, so pause the video, reread the first paragraph, and then you'll find your answer. The moment they landed on a branch, their feet stuck, and that was that. The next morning, which was Bird Pie Day, Mr. Twit would climb up the ladder again and grab all the wretched birds that were stuck to the tree. It didn't matter what kind they were, song thrushes, blackbirds, sparrows, crows, little jenny wrens, robins, anything. They all went into the pot for Wednesday's bird pie supper. What was Mr. Twit's method for catching birds for bird pie? How did he catch them? Pause the video to write your answer. Chapter 16. 4 Little Sticky Boys. On one Tuesday evening, after Mr. Twit had been up the ladder and smeared the tree with Hugtite, 4 little boys crept into the garden to look at the monkeys. They didn't care about the thistles and the stinging nettles, not when there were monkeys to look at. After a while, they got tired of looking at the monkeys, so they explored further into the garden and found the ladder leaning against the big dead tree. They decided to climb up it just for fun. There's nothing wrong with that. The next morning, when Mr. Twit went out to collect the birds, he found 4 miserable little boys sitting in the tree, stuck as tight as could be by the seat of their pants to the branches. There were no birds because the presence of the boys had scared them away. Mr. Twit was furious. "As there are no birds for my pie tonight," he shouted, "then it'll have to be boys instead." He started to climb up the ladder. "Boy pie might be better than bird pie," he went on, grinning horribly. "More meat and not so many tiny little bones." The boys were terrified. "He's going to boil us," cried one of them. "He'll stew us alive," wailed the second one. "He'll cook us with carrots," cried the third. Why would boy pie be better than bird pie? Pause the video to write your answer. But the 4th little boy, who had more sense than the others, whispered, "Listen, I've just had an idea. We are only stuck by the seat of our pants. So quick, unbutton your pants and slip out of them and fall to the ground." Mr. Twit had reached the top of the ladder and was just about to make a grab for the nearest boy when they all suddenly tumbled out of the tree and ran for home with their naked bottoms winking at the sun. But the 4th little boy, who had more sense than the others. Does this tell us that this boy is smarter or less smart than the other boys? Pause your video now to write your answer. To be continued. Next day, we are going to read chapters 17, 18, and 19. Bye, everyone.